completely out of the blue, in 2013, we received a phone call from a doctor in Pittsburgh where our daughter was living, our only child, Alex, and she was in hospital, very sick from massive blood clots in her lungs that were caused by her hormonal birth control. We immediately caught a flight up there, but before we could get there, she died on the operating table. They could never get her stable enough to do anything about it. So she just, probably 5 hours after she was admitted to hospital, she was dead.
My daughter, Julia, who was 29 years old, died in 2013, provoked by her hormonal birth control. She became dizzy and started having symptoms, and they went to the hospital, and she died the next day.
I was about to study abroad and go to Spain, and for years of my life, I always really struggled with very painful, just terrible periods, and it affected my monthly, day-to-day life. And I decided for a while not to go on birth control, but as I was preparing to go study abroad, I didn't want that experience to be hindered in any way by something that I really couldn't control. I ended up going on a generic of Yaz, and I didn't think anything of it. I was told it was safe, but almost immediately after starting it, once I had gotten to Spain a few months later, I started to experience a lot of different symptoms, from shortness of breath to constant coughing. In fact, I was coughing so much that I had rib pain, which eventually turned into a broken rib.
In the fall of 2023, I was rushed to the hospital with severe upper abdominal pain. And at the time, I was about a month out from running my first marathon, so I honestly was in the best shape of my life. I had just run 15 miles that week. I was super healthy. And so after tons of testing, imaging, screening, they not only diagnosed me with a perforated stomach ulcer, but they also informed me that I had multiple pulmonary embolisms in my lungs.
No symptoms, no warning, nothing. Other than the night before she died, she was having dinner with a friend, and Alex remarked that she must have overdone it at the gym because she had a sore thigh.
What was really alarming was that you can feel super healthy and great and not have symptoms, but still have something super scary going on in your body. Yeah, it was kind of a blessing in disguise that I had the perforated ulcer, because had I not, I don't know if we ever would have caught them.
Afterwards, when we got the autopsy, she'd had a DVT. And we did discover in her purse were some, ibuprofen type of things, that maybe she was we're guessing, she may be having leg cramps, and was thinking, I'll just take, this over-the-counter medication.
And I really knew something was wrong when I was with my mom on a trip to Mexico. We were on the plane getting ready to go to baggage claim, and I remember I was struggling to get from the plane to baggage claim. And I remember sitting down while we were on the way, and my mom looked at me and she said, something's really wrong with you. Once I got back home, I went to the doctor, who did a bunch of different tests. Finally, I had a CAT scan. And after that CAT scan, I remember going back up to her office, and she was sitting there waiting for me, which is terrifying. You never want a doctor to be sitting there waiting for you. And she told me, you have extensive blood clots in both of your lungs. You need to get to an emergency room right now.
I ended up spending a week in the hospital. I was on blood thinners for a little over 3 months. I was really hoping that they would find some sort of blood condition, just to get some sort of clear answer, or family history. But it turned out that not all my blood work came back completely clear, so they linked it to my hormonal birth control that I was on.
Eventually, I did find out that both of my lungs were almost completely covered in blood clots. And unfortunately, I had a ginormous blood clot almost completely blocking my pulmonary artery. So the doctors thought that I was going to go into shock and die. and they told me that I needed to have an emergency heart catheterization. So I underwent that, and luckily that dissolved that clot, and I didn't really have to worry about how that was going to affect me anymore, but I still had lots and lots of other clots in my lungs. We also found out that I was suffering from pulmonary hypertension because my heart was under so much strain.
What's most amazing to me is this is not an incredibly rare event. The way Alex died happens to quite a few young women every year.
It's devastating, and there's millions of women taking hormonal birth control. So take that millions of women and the 1 or 2% or 4% or whatever that is, because each hormone has a different risk factor, and you have hundreds and thousands of women who are affected. They don't all die, but a blood clot can cause serious lifelong problems.
I was very, very slowly going into heart failure, and that was very terrifying to know. I ended up seeing a pulmonary hypertension specialist who had actually seen a lot of other very similar cases to my own. And from there, that started a journey to figure out if I would be diagnosed with a disease called CTEPH, or chronic thromboembolic pulmonary hypertension.
I think something that's not really talked about enough is the mental impact that after any sort of severe medical diagnosis, especially in someone that mentally thinks that they are so healthy and feels so healthy and is so fit, and then being diagnosed with a very life-threatening condition. It's almost, I think they call it imposter syndrome. You're like, no, that's not me. That didn't happen to me. So I think kind of dealing with that and feeling very isolated in that condition. It was
eventually my pulmonary hypertension specialist did determine that I did in fact have CTEPH, and that the best option for me going forward to have a full quality of life would be to go to San Diego to have a very rare surgery called a pulmonary thromboendarterectomy. But basically what they do is they stop your heart, and as they stop your heart, they pull out the clots from your lungs. It's very scary, but I knew that it was my best shot to be able to live a normal life. So on Valentine's Day of 2020, I had my PTE surgery. It was definitely the best and worst thing to ever happen to me, but I'm so grateful that I was able to have that surgery and that it was able to give me this second chance at life.
So the takeaway from our experience was people need to be more educated and aware, which is why we set the foundation up to raise awareness of these issues relating to hormonal birth control and women's health in general. The doctors, the medical industry, and the public altogether are pretty relaxed about hormonal birth control.
I encourage women when they are deciding what contraceptive option that they want to go with, whether it's a pill, non-hormonal, hormonal, just to ask as many questions as you can and just to really do your research, because I think oftentimes when doctors prescribe birth control pills, they just prescribe it and say, hey, okay, this should be good luck. And there's no follow-up. There's no, hey, how's it going? And when you open your package, there's the long list of warning signs, and obviously blood clots are one of them, but you don't ever think, oh, that's going to be me.
The motivation is that we don't want to see this happen to other young women. They deserve to have a full life. And I feel like there wasn't enough information given to my daughter.
They kind of just hand you a pamphlet and they're like, okay, you can look through it, see which one you feel like works best for you. And there's not really the personal relationship of like, so what prior medical issues have you had? How do you feel on a day-to-day basis? I think in-person conversations are the most impactful.
I don't think that women are properly educated and informed. And so I do think a lot of that goes back to the medical professionals. I think that medical professionals should be giving better information to women, but I also think that women need to know that they can ask questions.
Not just handing them a sheet of paper with the signs and symptoms, but going over them with them and talking to them about it, so that they go, oh, this is really important. And they may really remember, not because they read it, but because you said it.
But especially if you have the right predispositions, a genetic condition, particularly called Leiden 5. If you've got that in your family's history, the chances of you having a really bad or fatal blood clot go up significantly. And nobody talks about it. By bringing in a round table of medical professionals, the hope is that we can begin educating and making people more aware in general, and just open up the debate to a wider audience. So the hope is that going forward, the foundation can continue to grow, continue to get the word out, and continue to save lives and injuries.
If I could prevent 1, 2, 3 deaths, it would help me feel like I've done something in the world, because it's one of the most challenging experiences I've ever had in my life.
A lot of people assume that blood clots from birth control is so rare. People aren't really talking about it too much, but it's actually incredibly common. My biggest piece of advice would be to ask questions and do your research.
We want women to be able to make an informed decision about their birth control choices, so they're not going to end up like my daughter.